Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Wealth Pathways, the Affluence Science Insights Podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Marie Stella, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together. Hello and welcome back to the show. Competitive as ever, today's professional world requires a combination of skill, determination, and strategic planning for those in pursuit of a career progression. So, from identifying career goals to developing a personalized roadmap to building a strong professional network and honing the right skills, we'll be taking a look at what it takes to achieve career advancement. And joining us today is career coach Kristy Taylor. Impressively, she has lectured on the campus of Yale University and was selected as one of Harvard's Women in Higher Education Leadership. Kristy is also known as the Social Impact Career Coach and is the founder of WORxK Solutions, where she specializes in providing career and organizational development, as well as resiliency coaching and workshop facilitation for mission-driven individuals and organizations. So we are thrilled to have her on the show with us today. Hello, Kristy, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Marie. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here to speak to your audience today.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on. So before we begin, tell us a little bit about yourself and what sparked your interest in career coaching.
I know when you think of career coaching or writing resumes, it could, to the average person, it could seem like the most boring thing, right? But I just have an affinity for watching people bloom. And sometimes when we see ourselves on paper, when we see all of our accomplishments on paper, it is a big career booster. So I have a background, my undergrad degree is in human resources, and I just have always had a passion for helping and championing people to achieve their career goals. And so several years ago, I decided to open up my own career coaching practice. And at that point in time, I was specifically helping healthcare professionals. But fast forward a few years later, I changed my name to WORxK Solutions. And if you're watching this, you'll notice that the name is spelled WORxK. The RX stands for prescription, because I like to say that we are the prescription for change in people's careers and in the workplace. So it's a great passion of mine to watch people truly bloom and achieve their career goals.
Yeah, that's excellent. So from what you've seen, what are some of the most common struggles that people face with career progression?
One, to me, the biggest thing is imposter syndrome. And so sometimes we have that seat at the table, or we have opportunities, but we don't always feel as if we are a fit. Another challenge that I've seen, I know we're going to come back to this discussion later, is the skills gap. We, in this competitive environment that we are working in and living in, we have to constantly be educating ourselves. Just think about it. A few years ago, AI was not a hot topic as it is today, right? And so these days we're having to compete. Some of the jobs, it has made our life easier in some way, right? But in some ways, some people are having challenges with adapting. And then also in the environment where you work, some roles are not designed to necessarily be to set up for you to progress in the way that we've probably been raised, that if I start here, if I start at the bottom, I can work my way to the top if I stay in this one role, right? So there's quite a bit there. And the other piece I would just say is just being unclear about your career goals. So if we don't have a plan, that makes it a little bit harder to know where we're going. So those are some of the challenges that I'm really seeing with a lot of my clients coming in.
Yeah, that's a great preface for our topic for today. And I think we'll flesh this out a lot deeper into detail later on in our episode. But before we do that, I would love to get to know you better. So this is Have You Met Kristy? And my first question for you is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
So, in my spare time, I really enjoy reading, shopping. I have one of my favorite hobbies is I collect Barbie dolls. And I actually just started doing pageants. So I
Oh,
entered my at 41 years old. I decided I'm going to challenge myself, and this is that thing that I kind of mentioned, right? Always be challenging yourself and building your skills. So I decided to enter my first beauty pageant, and my competition is next week. I don't know if this episode will have aired, but I've also set myself up to do about 3 pageants next year. So I have just always engaged in something being proactive. In addition to that, I have a great love for American history. Many people don't know that about me. I have a master's degree in history, and I still continue to teach history even to this day. So I think just this diversity of things that I do and enjoy.
yeah, I'll say that's incredibly diverse. And
Okay.
pageants, that's an interesting choice. I think pageants are pretty hard to come. Well, actually, I wouldn't say they're hard to come by, but I don't see them very often, at least where I'm from. And I don't understand what really happens behind the scenes, and I imagine most people don't either. So, what is something that most people don't know about pageants?
So what I have learned fairly quickly is and why I decided to continue on because I did this as a challenge for myself. And a lot of times we look at the patterns that we see on TV and we just without knowing, we think that it's just focused on the beauty aspects of representing women. But in actuality, there's tons of different pageant systems out there. And even the major pageants that we see, a lot of those women, they are doing volunteer work, they're engaging in their community. So the pageant itself is not just about the beauty aspect of womanhood, but it's about the heart, the inner and outer part. And that people see aesthetics, but don't realize that there's so much more that goes with it behind the scenes. As a career and executive coach, I was looking for a way just to elevate myself, right? And learn some new skills, engage with people, and challenge myself in a different way. So that's why I decided to do it. Now, some of the pageants that are going to be competing in, they are smaller systems, right? So they're not like large scale pageants that you'll see on TV, but it is a great way to network. It's a great way to connect with other women. It's a great way to share your platform that you're passionate about. And I just really have loved the experience so far. So if you are looking to do something different, there might be opportunities out there for you.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And you mentioned before that you enjoy reading. So, what is something that you've enjoyed reading recently?
Oh, well, have I read anything recently?
Okay,
I have an
yeah.
affinity for I have an affinity for sci-fi. So the last series that I read was called Nuclear Dawn.
Hmm.
And I don't know why it's so weird, right? Because somebody looks at me. I have this affinity for like sci-fi, Walking Dead, end of the world type of books. So the last big series that I finished up was Nuclear Dawn, and that was earlier this year. I
Hmm.
haven't read any serious books lately, but I just have this like, or if it's a book about going to Mars and starting a colony on Mars. I think I read a whole like 6, 7 series about called Colony Mars. It actually was a audio book series that the author himself had placed on YouTube. So I just like to kind of get some different thoughts and engage and I just think that it's like the sci-fi portion is
Hmm.
it's just a fun aspect and play versus like reading like the traditional leaders eat last type of
Yeah.
books, right? Because I'm consuming that kind of material, at least digesting that kind of stuff all the time. To
Yeah.
me, reading gives your mind a break. So whereas like we can continue to learn,
Hmm.
right? I think like reading like the sci-fi pieces and exposing yourself to like some just the creativity of other authors, it's just so fascinating to me.
Yeah, I feel like reading unserious books is 100% valid. Like, we already live in a world with so many serious issues that we have to face every single day, and giving your mind a break from it is completely valid. You know, sci-fi is really interesting as well because there's some portions of it that are like theorizing, scientific theorizing, I suppose, mixed with like artistic creativity. So it's always really interesting.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of that, what has really been consuming me, and I'm sorry, I got caught up in the black hole of Facebook advertisements. I don't know if you've seen these little advertisements of these like little mini series, audio book type of stories, and then you have to use coins to get to like they'll share pieces of the stories with you. That is literally what has been in my spare time. I just sit and listen to those audio books. And so like right now I'm like reading this fiction book. It's not sci-fi, it's like secrets I don't tell my ex or something like that. But it's like a soap opera series, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, I got caught in the black hole of the little, but that's why it's like, okay, when you like, I'm back picking up books to read, I'm like, I'm listening to this all day at work. And it's like, I can't wait to get to the next little, they're like 3 little 8 to 12-minute segments. And I cannot wait to get to the next one. So I'm always like, it's like kids playing Roblox, right?
Yeah.
And you need to buy Roblox coins. That is what I have been listening to, like literally seriously. It consumes so much time. So like if you ask me, have I picked up a book by a major author? No, not lately, because I'm either listening to like I said, Nuclear Dawn was so great, but then I got into that little black hole of the little mini audio book series where they're giving you tidbits every day. And I literally have been sitting there just consuming these books with the same storyline over and over. I just cannot get enough of it.
I actually think I know what you're talking about, because I've been a victim of this, but not through Facebook, through TikTok, and not audiobooks, but like normal not really fan, but community written books. And they have like very, very short chapters.
That's it.
Right? Yeah. They're actually so good.
They are. I can't help it. So it's like if you ask me, okay, have you consumed a major author lately? No. I think it's called Pocket FM or something like that. That app, that has become a TikTok for me, because I literally sit and I go down the black hole of because they encourage people to write their own like telenovelas, right? Their own little books.
Yeah.
And I just sit and I listen. I'm like, oh my God. Like I am so obsessed with that.
Yeah, this is actually fantastic, because I haven't been able to find somebody else with a similar experience to me, and I've been kind of bottling this experience up and not sharing it with anyone. So it's good to know that I'm not the only victim out there.
I can't help it. It's really consuming. So that is, so those are some of the things I enjoy in my spare time. And from the Barbie collections to the going down the black hole of the mini audiobook series. It's, but I think that all of those things are great to kind of give your head, space a break, right?
Yeah, that all sounds like good fun. But my last question for you is, who do you look up to the most, either in your professional life or your personal life?
Well, who do I look up to the most is my mom. I know that some people would just say like a movie. So like I like to say that I'm the Oprah Winfrey of training and development, right? When I'm going out and I'm talking about resiliency. So I really like her from a talk host standpoint, and how we're both from Mississippi and she built this, empire for herself. But the person that I really look up to is my mom. My mom is like the person who can do it. I have none of her talents. She can do it all in terms of sewing, cooking. She has ran her own business for years, and I aspire to be like her. So that is hands down the person I admire the most. But when you talk about movie stars, I like to say people like Oprah, because I like to talk. So when people think of me, I try to get them to connect with me and saying, okay, she's like the HR Oprah Winfrey. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's really sweet that you look up to your mom, and I'm sure she appreciates it. I feel like mothers are so underrated. Believe it or not, they're really underrated. They're the foundation of our world. So Kristy's mom, if you're watching this is for you. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you a bit better. Now let's move on to our interview. For starters, what does affluence mean to you?
Typically, when you hear the word affluence, I think of rich people, right? But it's so much more, because affluence is about you having access to resources It is about your standards, maintaining high standards. It's about your network. So it's not necessarily, and that's actually one of the reasons why I got involved in pageantry, because to me, there's a level of affluence, right? It gives me access to a network. It gives me access to more resources. I can engage with other like-minded women. And I really like that. And I think when we think of a true definition of affluence and what it means, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be rich. It really is about your mindset and the standards that you set for yourself in terms of how you're going to engage with others, what the expectations are in terms of how others engage with you, as well as your access to resources and your ability to network to be able to get what you want.
Yeah, for sure. And how would you define career progression?
One, I mentioned earlier that sometimes we have challenges in our careers because we don't always have a plan. One of the things that I tell my clients, because I focus a lot on mindset, is that one of the first things we have to do is really learn to define success for ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about career progression, a lot of us were raised that you get a job, you started at the bottom, you work your way to the top, but you have to know yourself. So when we talk about career progression, you have to be clear on what success means for you, because that career progression or that ladder may not look the way that you were kind of groomed or taught that it should look. All right. So for some people, career progression will be you start at the bottom of an organization and work your way up to management or leadership. But for others, like for people like me, I have a great job that I enjoy. I'm not necessarily looking to progress in that aspect of my career, but in terms of growing my business, my creative outlets, my forms of self-expression, those are the things that I'm seeking to grow. So when you're defining career progression, knowing yourself and what success means and having a clear plan and being able to just understand that it can mean different avenues that you are pursuing to get to your goals that you want to achieve.
Yeah. So in what ways does career progression contribute to one's affluence?
So we just talked about affluence, and I said that affluence itself is not necessarily you being rich, right? Wealth per se. It is about your access to resources, your networking, your mindset, the standards that you set for yourself. So when applying that to career progression, think about it from this aspect. I mentioned that you should be defining success for yourself. You should be setting standards for yourself, creating a plan for yourself. So in terms of affluence and career progression, the tenets of affluence, all of those things that one would be, definitionally, one would need to be considered affluence, right? Mm-hmm. That really is the groundwork for you actually creating a plan for your own career progression, because you are defining it based on your own terms and setting standards for yourself, right? In terms of how you're going to engage, how people should engage with you. I was telling somebody yesterday that at a minimum at our jobs, there's a certain level of respect that we all should expect, right? You should not have to be disrespected or abused in a job role just because you want to progress at that organization. That's not a good fit for you, right?
Yeah. And it's unfortunate as well that so many people don't necessarily have the means to decide to just drop out or quit a job just because of that lack of respect as well. So what is your advice for managing something like that?
So one, know yourself and don't feel like that you have to take that. But I get it. One of the things I've never done as a coach is to say, this is a horrible environment. You have to quit immediately, because people have bills, they have real life going on. But what you do have to do is make a plan for yourself. I like to say 6 months from now will look different from how it looks today, right? Because I know that I want to change something about my situation, that it starts with myself. It starts with my mindset. And sometimes even when working in corporate organizations, you can go through all of the avenues of talking to your boss to let them know this is going on. You can talk to HR. And sometimes you don't always get the answer that you want from that situation. So you have to make a decision for yourself to decide how you're going to move on, because at a minimum, again, you deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. And you don't have to take that, but you do have to have an exit plan. You do have to have a strategy for moving on.
Yes. And you've been mentioning a lot about making a plan and how that's incredibly vital for career advancement. So, what does making a plan look like? What are the important factors of a successful plan?
So it depends on where you are in your career. So let's just say I'm just starting out. I'm not sure what I want to do. One of the foundational things that you can do is take some sort of assessment, right? To kind of see where your skills are, what your strengths, what your weaknesses are. You can get feedback. Now, at any level in the career planning process, you can get feedback on your strengths, your weaknesses, what people think will be a great fit for you. But this is also about you knowing yourself. So you decide what it is that you want to do and where you want to go. Write it down. Somebody said something very interesting yesterday that I saw online, and it was just, we make vision boards, but what about a reverse vision board where we talk about all of the things that we don't want, right? So as you're laying out your career plan, be clear about what it is that you want, at least, what is the long-term vision in terms of where you want to go. Identify those points of where you, that you're going to, like the skills that you're going to need to get there. Maybe you're going to need to take some additional training. Maybe you need to shadow someone, or you need to be mentored by someone, or you have to do an apprenticeship, but you have to identify all of the steps that's going to take you to get to that goal. But then you should also write out not just the things that you want in your career. I focus a lot on work environments. So you should also write out the things that you want and you don't want in a work environment, right? And when you go into a job interview, you should be paying attention to that organizational culture. How are they treating you in that interview? Because it's going to tell you a lot about how they're going to treat you when you get into the organization. Now, I'm talking in terms of you working for someone else, but your career progression and career planning can also be how you want to go about things as an entrepreneur. It would be the same process, laying it out, doing the research to get to where you want to go, laying out the steps, and then celebrating those small wins as you progress, and just acknowledging that it might take some time, but I'm getting there. The last thing I'm going to say in the answering that question is, when it comes to career planning and career progression, recognize the power of yet. Because it can seem like a long process. Think about it. If you go to medical school here in the United States, it's 8 years. It could seem like a never ending story. But I like to tell clients to focus on the power of yet. I'm not a doctor yet, but I'm going to do all of the things to get there, right? One step at a time, and I'm celebrating the win. I'm not a business owner yet, or I'm not that 6-figure business owner yet, but I'm doing all of the things to get there. The yet is sometimes that gives you that motivation to keep you going, to get to that level of affluence that you want to be at.
Yeah. And when it comes to using strengths and passion to drive career progression, what can people do to leverage on that apart from skills assessment?
So I really think the feedback that you get from other people is very important. Now, don't ask anybody for feedback. These should be people that you're engaged with, that know you. I like the idea of 360 feedbacks. We do those on like supervisors, people get, but you can just ask people like your friends, your family, folks who know the caliber of work that you do, and ask them for real-time feedback and say, hey, I just completed this project, or we just engaged. What do you think was my greatest strength in this, right? What do you think really stood out? And just think about it yourself. You should really be always assessing yourself to identify areas of strengths and areas of, we say weaknesses. Some people say areas of improvement. However, right? And then you should be always working to cultivate those skills, because that's going to play a big part in that process. Once you really know what your strengths are, that's what you have to play up, right? When you read the beginning of my bio, it said things like, I've lectured on the campus of Yale, that I've done all of this. And that's a strength. That's a highlight in marketing myself. So once you know what your strengths are, you play that up while you're continuing to build those areas of improvement, right? You building that skill set. But you know that when you go into that interview, or when you're presenting yourself to employers, that what those strengths are And that's what you're going to really speak to in an interview in alignment with whatever the job description that they're looking for.
Yeah, it can be a real huge struggle though for people with imposter syndrome, like you've mentioned at the start of the episode. So, what advice do you have for managing the imposter syndrome?
We're talking about affluence, right? And a lot of that is related to mindset. You have to know that if you have been given an opportunity, if you have that seat at the table, you deserve to be there. Nobody's going to beat that into your head every 5 minutes. You have to manage and control your own mindset. One of the things that I always say is that we're human. And so if a coach is out there telling you, you can do it, be positive every day, they're not taking, you can do it, right? But people don't always take into, they don't take into consideration that we're human. And so you're going to have some up and down when it comes to your emotions. If you have imposter syndrome, it is 100% on you, your responsibility to take control of your mindset and reaffirm to yourself that you deserve to have the seat at the table, that you deserve this opportunity, that you are the best of the best. And sometimes you have to tell yourself that a million times, even when you don't feel it, right? You have to tell yourself that, because that's the only way that you're going to overcome that, because nobody's going to babysit you. If you have that seat at the table, they expect you to perform.
And when you're in doubt, fake it till you make it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes faking it is the way you make it, to just get through it. Even if you don't sorry.
That's that telling yourself the same thing over and over, right? Of I deserve to be here, even when you don't feel it. And that's why I say feelings are so different from emotional management, right? Because if you just went with your feelings, that's just how you feel in that moment. But when you're proactively managing and controlling your emotions, it's gonna turn out a lot better for you, because you're engaging with yourself mentally.
Yeah, and that's especially important for another aspect of career advancement as well, which is networking and building relationships. How would you describe this aspect of career advancement? How would you describe its role in the overall scheme of things?
Well, part of Affluence is building a network. It can be difficult, especially if you're introverted, because it's for as much as I'm talking right now, I can be very introverted. Like I've gotten used to being on podcasts and doing these type of events, right? But for the average everyday person, if you're introverted, you have to, again, that mindset, you have to make that shift in your mindset to say, I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to introduce myself to 3 people. And if that's all you can do that day, right? You just have to make the effort, because people are going to know you by your work. So one, you want to be a high performer. You want to make sure that if you say that you're going to do something, that you follow through on your word. And sometimes it really can be the smallest thing when it comes to building your network. Let's say that I meet a lady named Marie. And
what a coincidence.
And I meet Marie at the local Starbucks, right? And we engage in a short conversation, and I say, Marie, I'm going to follow up with you, because maybe you had a question and it just came up, and I was like, oh, I have a resource for that. And I'm going to follow up with you. Well, if I never follow up with you, that kind of says that, hey, that I don't follow up on my word. And you never know when we'll cross paths again, right? But it just might be me just simply sending you that resource, sending you that link that I promised you, because you're going to remember that. Oh, I remember Kristy because I needed something and she sent it to me. So sometimes it's the smallest things that we do. It's not about, yes, it's about the results that we deliver on some of the major projects as well. But sometimes it's just about how we show up for people. So if you're going out there and you're networking, and let's say you're going to an event and you're like, I just cannot do this, I'm scared. Just make it a point to say, I'm going to talk to 2 to 3 people, right? And if you can be there 30 minutes to talk to 2 to 3 people, engage with them in a natural flow, and you connect with them, and you say that you're going to do something, or I'll email you in a week and we can go out for coffee. Just make sure you do that, because all of that is a part of building your network. It's a part of your credibility, because you never know when you might need an opportunity, when you might need assistance with something, and then you can rely on that person. In the long term, I have connections that I have made 10, 15 years ago. We recently had a event here in DC, and I reached out to one of my connections 10 years ago that I've been knowing this person. And I just said, hey, I know that you work in downtown DC. I want to go to some of these events. Not only did he send me access to like 2 or 3 events, he really by the time he was done, I had access to like 30 events of this conference that were happening, right? Simply because I stayed in touch.
Mm-hmm.
So the networking is going to be so important for your career progression because you just never know who you might meet, who can help you with that turning point or transition or provide you with that resource that could change, that can make a major difference in how you deliver a project in terms of your career, your next career opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, for sure. And that's a really important piece right there because people always remember how you've treated them. People might not always remember exactly, precisely what the quality of your work is per se, but they will remember how you treated them and, if you followed through something.
yeah, because that credibility piece is important. That's what I said. Sometimes we think there has to be some grand gesture
Mhm,
that we've done. Like that's important, right?
mhm,
Especially as you're building your connections in that company. But people are going to remember your humanity, your
mhm,
credibility in terms of following up, delivering on what you said that you were going to do. It's those
mhm.
small things too that count just as much as the large things.
Yeah, and we always hear of the traditional routes of networking events and or industry conferences, for example, or getting a mentor, and so on. But what are some avenues for networking and building relationships that might be less conventional?
I like LinkedIn. I like Meetup. I don't Meetup.com is really like it's a social group site.
Mhm,
So sometimes going to these little non-work type of
mhm,
events, like uh, I'm going to use Meetup as an example because that's what I use
mhm,
for connecting, right? So there's all of these different social groups on Meetup. There's like people who like to roller skate or people who are going to movie nights. It's not necessarily a professional networking group,
mhm,
but through these types of avenues, these non-traditional ways, I've had an opportunity to meet a bunch of great people that
mhm,
live in the same community, that work in the DC area. So when you are thinking out of the box, don't think of just like, oh, well, I'm a biologist, so I'm going to go to biology related events, right?
mhm,
Go to things that your hobbies. I might go to a Barbie convention, right? You just
mhm,
never know where you're going to meet people that that you can connect with that'll be able to help you professionally. But the cool thing about those out of the box methods or approaches is that it allows you to be able to share a personal commonality with those individuals that you connect with them first
mhm.
versus you giving them that standard out of the box, um, you know, elevator pitch. It's
Yeah.
more natural human interactions. Think about it. If you go to a game night and you're
Mhm,
playing board games, you're having fun, and you just get into a conversation with someone. They even have these things now that they're doing where it's like you can go to dinner with 5 strangers, and
mhm,
then you meet and talk. So I'm just thinking like out of the box, those fun ways. Or again, if you're going to a conference or a convention, it doesn't necessarily have to directly be related to your career field. Maybe just go to learn and connect with other people and just kind of let that natural human energy flow because those human connections and that natural human engagement and working together and talking together on a personal level, that's going to really help you to build your network.
mhm. Yeah, that's really good advice. And when it comes to progressing the journey overall in career progression, it comes with a lot of adversity and frequent changes at times. So how would you describe the importance of resilience and adaptability in facing all of these setbacks and changes?
Great question, Marika. Resiliency is my absolute favorite topic of discussion. Look, when we're growing up, a lot of times I have a type A personality. So of course I had a plan. I'm going to get from A, B, C, D, right?
Mhm,
But what happens when sometimes your plan to go from A to B goes from you going from A to Z or A to N?
mhm,
It just does not. The road that you're traveling in life is going to be winding. What you have to do as a person, again, be able to control your emotions. You have to
mhm,
develop your emotional intelligence. You
mhm,
have to be proactive about managing your mindset. You have to embrace the power of yet that I talked about earlier, because sometimes when the road is windy, you're going to get where you want to go. But I'm going to caveat that sometimes we have a career plan. I think about myself. I had a career plan. I was going to be a college president. That's what I was aiming for, right? I'm nowhere near that. And it is, and I've made a transition in the last 4 years where I will never get there. I totally transitioned out of what I was doing, which is higher education, and moved into a more corporate training and development setting. But I'm focused on also building my business. So when we talk about career planning and career progression, it's great to have a plan. When we talk about being resilient, though, we have to make sure that we're managing our mindset, that we keep an open mind to the possibilities, because sometimes we put these demands on the universe, but that might not be in our mind. This is exactly what we want. And you've had cases of manifestation where people get exactly what they want and then they're completely miserable. So what I would tell you is to keep an open mind, to allow the universe to bring you the best fit for you. And as you travel this windy road, right, you'll have all of these elements and things where you are happy, but resiliency comes into play because you're able to adapt, you're flexible, and you are open to achieving your goals in a different way versus I have to go from point A to point B, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes the road looks like this versus this.
Yeah, 100%. I found something to be incredibly helpful to me personally is having that half glass full mindset of like, sure, my plan is not panning out exactly how I envisioned it to be. However, I have all these other things in life as well, that I can be grateful for. And in this plan changing, there are good things that come out of it. I've developed a different skill that I didn't necessarily think I would, but I really enjoy it, and that's okay.
Yeah, I just like that's where the flexibility comes in, right? If you are so stuck on your plan, it's harder to be resilient. It's harder because you're not adapting, you're not being flexible. But when you open yourself up, and I think you made a good point, right? Because so far we've talked a lot about career, but I like to say also holistic career coaching, where we also look at life balance, because we talk a lot about career progression, but there is a person out there who just has this, like, you have this job, this career, and you're satisfied with what you're doing because there are so many different, I'm one of those people, like, I'm satisfied with what I'm doing with my full-time job because there's so many different creative outlets that I have outside of that that allow, and that job is balanced enough that allows me the space to be able to express myself. So the path can be windy, but it's about how you adapt, and it's about how your mindset, because you are going to bounce back. And if you keep an open mindset and you keep doing the work, I like to say that your failure, quote unquote, is the tuition that you're going to pay for your success, right? Because as many times as we fall and we get back up, we do it better the next time. That's anything. And so I love what you just said about, okay, well, I learned a new skill. It's just about keeping that positivity going and knowing that you're learning, you're going to grow, and you're going to continue to adapt, and you will evolve to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, for
Eventually,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
The power of you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and sometimes if you put your mind to it, you end up finding beauty and passion in things you wouldn't have thought that you would. You end up being passionate about your new job that you didn't initially have the passion for. That's entirely possible. So yeah, like you said, keep an open mind. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. That was incredible advice. Now let's talk about some of the future trends and considerations in career progression. So what emerging trends in the job market should people be aware of?
I think the biggest thing for right now that people should be paying attention to is AI, right? With the emergence of AI, it has been so beneficial for us in the creative realm. It's been so beneficial for me as a trainer and facilitator. But one of the things, people get scared of stuff that they don't know a lot about. So one of the things I encourage you to do is to educate yourself about it, right? And then learn how to integrate that into your job. So learn how to actually use it to help you with your job or with your business. Use it as a tool. Don't fear this emergence of technology. Don't fear change. use it as a tool and an opportunity. What I really love to do is get in on stuff early and learn about it, because you are then you become a pioneer. Another thing is that right now we hear a lot about like the gig economy, and with the way the economy is working, yes, you need to be able to have some skill to earn extra money to do. But what I encourage people to do also is look at how you can leverage these skills that you're developing, not just a gig per se, but to actually use them and incorporate them into your daily life and job. Look at where the things that you are doing in terms of your creative outlet, how can it help you actually grow your real-time professional career, right? Because sometimes if I'm doing business, I'm so serious, I'm focused on business, but you have all of these other things that you're doing that are also skills that can help you to get to that next level that you might not even be taking time to really incorporate into your resume. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, we have people out here, you're focused on what you're doing at your job, but you have a whole different skill set on the outside that you can actually be like, oh, this person is a great project manager. This person is a great writer and editor. Like there's so much of that you can actually bring that could probably in your corporate job get you more money, get you paid. But again, it depends on where you want to go. If that's your actual career goal, so you might have that creative outlet and say, hey, I want to do my own thing. I told a client the other day, she was ready to move on from her job, not happy with the environment, but she was, like we talked about earlier, she was in a position where it's like, I can't just quit. So I said, okay, when you talk about developing a plan for yourself, do you have that creative outlet? So if that's the case, does the job just become a job? And then you focus more on where you're going to put your energy in terms of your own creative outlet and self-expression, because that may be the shift, right? So when we talk about the trends, I would say AI, taking advantage of this emergence of technology and how you can leverage it in your daily job or your business. 2, being able to leverage the skill sets that you're developing in these outside activities or your creative outlets to support yourself. And 3, just recognizing that where are you going to put your energy? I think that's a big part of it as well, right? Where are you going to put your energy in terms of when we talk about career planning and career progression? That is a big part of the process because you only have so much energy to disperse. And so where are you going to focus that energy on? Is it going to be to build somebody else's dream? Or is it going to be to build your dream? You have to really pay attention to that.
Yeah. And what advice do you have for those who are seeking to make a career transition like you have yourself?
Leverage those soft skills. Leverage those hard skills. For example, things like communication, project management, budget management. Those are skills that cross different sectors, different organizations, different job skills, right? So when you are making a career transition, focus your resume on the skill set, the competencies that you have, because that's going to be used as the basis for you to be able to use in other roles. You may think, like, I focus a lot on helping people in the social impact sector, right? But you may think, okay, well, I worked this job for 20 years and I was doing this technical work. But within the context of that, were you managing projects? Were you a team lead? You were managing people, managing projects, managing budgets. Well, guess what? This job that you think that you're totally not qualified for requires that same skill set. Apply for it. And so when we talk about transitions, apply for the job. It doesn't matter because the only thing they can tell you is no. So once you have a resume that's like really highlights your strengths and competencies, and you know that resume aligns with the skill set, apply for the job, because you never know if they're going to interview you or not. The worst they can do is tell you no. And how many of us have applied for jobs and not gotten a call back? It happens all the time. So don't take it personally.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that was really great advice. Now let's talk about some practices and habits. What's a habit, activity, or exercise that you'd recommend doing to support somebody's career progression journey?
I like to journal. I actually have a copy of my book that I wrote for women, The Career Mindset Reset. I talk a lot about mindset, To be able to really, you can find this book on Amazon, but
we'll link in the show notes.
Right. All right. So the thing is, it's about mindset, right? And if I'm talking to you about emotional control, and that is a process of learning emotional intelligence is a process. You with each thing that happens, when we talked about earlier, how to become more resilient. Well, the first time something happens, you might feel like the world is coming to an end. But when that same thing happens again, it's like you're going to respond differently because now you have the experience, right? Mm-hmm. So in that same way, when we talk about practices to help us with career progression and mindfulness, journaling really helps. Taking time to reflect on a daily basis, just, about your day. It's not even just about the career, but just taking 5 minutes to just reflect on the day, reflecting on the goals that you want. I was telling somebody today, it's about I'm talking from a corporate standpoint of like putting resources in front of people every day because I want them to see the same stuff over and over, right? It works the same way when we're talking about resetting our mind and refocusing on what it is that we want. Mm-hmm. I like to write down my goals. I have like 2 big sticky notepads over here. I like to write down my goals for the quarter. I stick them right on my wall. I want to see it every day. Reflecting and writing stuff down reinforces the goals and reinforces those things that you want to achieve. And then just take a minute to just defrag. I mean, sometimes you have to just take a deep breath. When you're coming from that job or whatever it is, you have to have a boundary to say, I'm done at 5 o'clock or I'm done at 6 o'clock, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to go and focus on some of those other creative outlets or engage with my family, because you have to give your mind and yourself time to reset for the start of each day.
Yeah. And do you have any suggestions on what kind of prompts we could use?
Today, I like to take a deep dive, right? So I use this rationally emotive, my framework in how I work with clients is called rational emotive behavior therapy. Mm-hmm. I use those models. One of the things that I like to do is, it's not necessarily a prompt, but exercise itself is this ABC approach where you're sitting down and it's like, today I, right? And then you're also looking at one barrier that I experience. And once you identify that barrier, you also have to proactively look for ways to overcome that barrier, especially if that barrier was your mindset, right? So then you're going to write, I will not, or I am. The I am is the biggest part of that. I am. So once you identify that barrier, let's say, I was offered an opportunity today, but I didn't feel that I was good enough or I was worthy, right? The I am is the prompt in terms of, well, I am worthy. I am, because now you're going to be starting to write an affirmation style journal, right? Mm-hmm. And you're looking back and reflecting on it, because what you're trying to do is replace those things. You've identified the barrier, because that's what REBT does, rational behavior. You identify the barrier, then you start to replace it with using the affirmations. You start to replace those negative thoughts with more positive thoughts by using that I am prompt, right? I am, and you start to make sure you visualize yourself as, I am worthy. I am a multimillionaire, because it helps you to see yourself. And by replacing those negative mindset thoughts, you're going to start to progress. You're going to start to be able to overcome them. And so that's why the journaling is so important. But with that, it's the visualization as well. You have to be able to see yourself in whatever it is that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, Kristy. It's been such a pleasure to hear from you. Now let's go into the open mic section. This is your opportunity to talk about anything that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic. So the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Well, I mentioned earlier that I just recently got into pageantry. So I wanted just to share about why I decided to do that, because that's a little bit different when we're talking about career progression and planning. Now, I'm a career and executive coach, but I always am continuously to challenge myself, and I want to be out of the box when I'm doing this, right? I don't just want to go to another team leader conference, right? And so I think that women deserve to feel beautiful. And I also love the ideology of being able to elevate a platform that I'm passionate about, which is career and workplace resiliency, as well as meet other like-minded people. And so what I'm telling you is that I literally just woke up on my 41st birthday and decided that I was going to do this. So the story is not about necessarily the pageantry piece. It's just about you making a decision that I'm going to do something out of the box and I'm not going to be afraid to do it. Because everything is about, we talk about affluence, right? Everything is about mindset. I haven't won a pageant yet, but but I'm going to win one. I'm going to be a queen at some point, right? Whether it's this one or the next one, I'm going to be a winner. I'm going to be Miss Maryland, you know. And so the story itself, like I said, it's not necessarily about the pageantry. It's about the mindset that I have to be able to challenge myself and to continue to want to do, even at my age, want to do things that are going to be different than what I've traditionally done in the past. In terms of, is this a great time to talk about my book? One of my creative outlets is is self-expression, right? And I pointed out earlier that I have this book, The Career Mindset Journal for Women, but that's not the only book. I have a book that talks about my framework, the REBT DEI framework. So I want to speak specifically to organizations. This book is a research book. So this is not the kind of book you buy to, oh, well, it's a journal. It's not. It's truly the research behind my framework, because I talk about us getting to the root cause of what makes us tick, right? Now, and developing that mindset or emotional intelligence. The same thing, the example that I'm showing you with the pageantry, because right now I am scared out of my mind. People want to put the facade on where be confident. I'm not necessarily confident in every area. In fact, when we finish this interview, I'm going downstairs and to the gym and learn how to walk in heels for the next hour. But I do believe in the power of yet. I do believe that although I'm not there yet, I'm going to do what it takes to develop my skill set so that I can get there. And every little win is progression. So my framework really focuses on that. But that framework, that book is focused on helping organizations to become more resilient, because within organizational culture and how we run our business as leaders, when we don't recognize the root cause of things that are impacting our culture. And I like to use DEIA as the standing point for that, because there's in organizational culture, there's so much diversity, equity, and we talk about inclusion and accessibility, but we have to recognize as leaders how our organizations are functioning. And once we can get to the root cause of what the challenges are in our organization, it works the same way as changing the mindset of an individual. But if we get to that root cause, then we can begin to identify the challenges within our organization and work as a team to be able to overcome that and change the organizational culture. So we talked a lot in this particular interview about career progression of individuals, but I just wanted to point out there that I do a lot of work also pertaining to organizational culture. And I'm glad I was able to share that example of how, like, as an individual, right, just being able to consistently challenge yourself to get to that next level, because that's going to be a big part of your career progression as well.
Excellent. So where can we find these books, and where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more about you and what you do?
Easy kill. So my personal Instagram is Dr.Kristy Taylor. I just made it last week. It's part of my but and then across all social media, we are WORxK Solutions, WORxK, WORxK Solutions LLC. And on TikTok, I'm giving career advice every day. We're posting career videos every day, as well as on LinkedIn and our Facebook page. We also have a free guide, which is very relevant to this conversation that we have today. And I'll make sure that you guys have the link. It's WORxSolutions.com/RX2025. That free guide is called The Prescription for Standing Out. And it is 10 quick tips to help you stand out. And it talks about everything from networking to your own career branding, and to get your career to that next level. So it's very relevant to that conversation. So we'll make sure that that resource is available. And as far as the books, all of my books are available on Amazon. Just type in Dr. Kristy Taylor.
Amazing. We'll link all of those in the show notes. Thank you once again, Kristy, for joining us today. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope you learned something about advancing in your career, and we'll catch you in the next episode. You've been listening to Wealth Pathways, the Affluence Science Insights Podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at affluence.lifemanagementsciencelabs.com, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.